Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Giraffe's product update. Today, we'll be diving into the latest product releases and features that make Giraffe more powerful and intuitive to use. So we'll be covering design, including our design library and design compare features, as well as finance, including all of the methods that you can use to utilize your financial modeling. So today's webinar will be available to rewatch on our events page on giraffe.build. So you can find this page under the resources section in the top navigation. There you'll find all of our upcoming events and recordings to view as well. So my name is Maggie. I'm the marketing director at Giraffe, and I'll be your host today. And leading our product update is James Blackwood, Giraffe's Chief Revenue Officer. He has extensive experience working in the AEC industry and helping enterprises leverage technology. James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Maggie, and thank you for setting this up. It's a pleasure to be taking you through our new features. I'm really excited about these three. They are designed to work together in unison and really take the Giraffe experience to a whole new level. So a little background on me. I come from selling analytics solutions to giant enterprises across the world, and I started with Giraffe in the founding team. And what we've been seeing over the last 2 years is the evolution of our customer base and the evolution of their needs from simple drawing tools through to bespoke applications that connect the whole front end of development, from site sourcing through to management of pipeline. And the big issue with the industry is the total lack of data. So beauty of Giraffe is you can create data and analyze data sort of in the one place. So we'll take you through some of those concepts today. And it's really the same question of whether you are a government user or a property developer or a consultant in the AEC vertical. We see a lot of the same challenges around a lot of the same problem sets. And the issue is, how do you bring all of those bespoke pieces of advice and IP into a common framework? And that right there is the ambitious undertaking of the Giraffe platform. And hopefully that'll come across today as we share these new features with you.
Great. So just a quick overview. Today we'll be showing those three new features that we talked about and how they work together to make a more interconnected, smart experience that helps you build better cities. So first, we're going to dive into finance, and our financials now look and feel like your pro forma, allowing you to easily create and manage dynamic project budget with line-by-line accuracy. Next up, we'll be going over our design, and then in there, we'll be covering our new design library and design compare features. And these features help you catalog, organize, and access all of your past designs, as well as allow you to create an index of required components to ensure that your design has everything accounted for. And then lastly, we're going to touch on how these components work together. They're interconnected to synchronize your design with your analysis and financials, so you'll be able to reuse them to streamline your future developments. So let's get started and dive into financials.
I was muted, apologies. So looking at the finance is going to take up the bulk of this presentation. It's a significant overhaul. I'll take you through a very brief overview for those of you who haven't seen the platform before, and then I'll dive in very deep onto the new financial cost building function. Secondly, we'll look at the design library, and then thirdly, the design compare features. So looking at finance, the key here was, how do we build a piece of software that is predominantly a design interface, but can connect the smarts of a pro forma into an intuitive user experience that caters to all the personalities in a development lifecycle. So keys were, they must include cost and income breakdowns in logical categories. You need to be able to bring all the pieces together to build out an intuitive, holistic feasibility study. You need to be able to build calculations a lot like your spreadsheets, because that is where most of the industry still lives, is in Excel. So it's got to look and feel like that. And then it's got to have the complexity to deal with any kind of different costs that you would be currently building out. So whether that is a usage specific cost, a project lump sum, a site calculation or derivatives of other categories, or prelims and margins that you add in a sequential line item based on total expenditure. Whatever it might be, it needs to cater to how the industry already thinks about it. And then obviously you need to be able to pull that down into Excel or to whatever your tool of choice is to be able to take that data and use it elsewhere. So that were the guiding principles behind what we built for finance. And I'll drop right over now to share, to start doing a demo, and we'll come back to the other two features. I expect this to take up a little bit of time, but if you do have questions, please chuck them in the chat. We're very interested to know what you guys are thinking, and we want this to be relatively dynamic with, within speaking. So please chuck it in the chat, and I'm more than happy to answer it as we go. And Maggie, if you could just monitor those, that'd be great. So very brief overview of what Giraffe is. If I just zoom out here for a minute, you can see that Giraffe works anywhere in the world. We are first and foremost a digital twin of the entire planet. And you can see each of these blue bubbles are projects that I've done in the past, or in this case, demonstrations. And as I dive into a particular area, I can see where those projects fall on the map. And I'm going to focus on demoing in Austin, just because I love Austin, but this demo could work just as well anyway. So very briefly, I'm looking at a site here that's downtown. I've brought in some contextual data from the city of Austin. This is just GIS data. You can see we've got the floodplain, we've got contours, we've got the city's zoning, and I've defined my boundaries. If you're interested in how to do that, we can cover that in another session, or you can reach out separately, but integrating with any GIS data is a cinch in Giraffe. I've got my spot and I want to start doing my financial pro forma. So firstly, I'm going to just draw a quick concept. You know, everything in Giraffe revolves around what your idea is, and we are trying to give you tools to be as fast as an algorithm. So we'll come down to our drawing toolbar. I'm going to select, why don't we do a retail, let's do a quick retail wrap around a car park with a couple of stories of commercial. And I'm just using S on my keyboard to snap to the perimeter of the site. I'm going to offset this on the inside of the site, and I want it to be about 55 feet deep. And then I'll draw some car parking back here. Now I know from the Austin zoning code that I can get roughly 100% of the site here, so I don't need to be too worried about it. I can keep to an FAR of 8. So I'm going to just be keeping that in mind as I draw. I'm going to drop down my retail. I will add a couple of stories of commercial. And I'm just whipping this up. We can go into design features with you if you'd like on a different call. I'm just doing this purely to get a model that we can then use to start building some financials on. And again, I might call it about 80-foot depth tower. I'm just doing a resi tower on top here. We'll do about 10 stories. And there we have it. There's our first concept, right? Now, everything that is coming out here on our right-hand side is the smarts of Giraffe. It's taking the shapes that we've drawn and it's turning them into meaningful data that we can perform analyses on. And we automate a lot of those analyses. But that data is only as powerful as your assumptions that define the way that you do business. And we manage those assumptions up here in the left-hand side in what's called a usage. So I'm just going to open up the residential type, and we'll stay focused on the residential typology for the financial calculator. So we have all of our typical usages, efficiencies to get from gross building area to FAR, cell efficiency to get from gross building area to net rentable. And these are driving the outputs of our yield with, you know, unit sizes and mix of units and that sort of thing. I can add as many of these as I want. But what we're really focused on today is how does that then stack up into financial metrics? How do those two worlds bleed together and give us something that's really meaningful and powerful in a split second? So the financial calculator over here on the right-hand side is totally new. We've got 4 tabs that break our financial metrics into intuitive columns. First is the summary, that is a list of everything, expenses, incomes, the totals, and then we can also do a projected outcome if we want to solve for feasibility as well. Expenses, we do some expenses for you automatically when we start generating here. Some of those might be like the grading of the site or the hazardous materials. I can show you that in a minute. And then as we're drawing, we're starting to get the costing data from each of those usage types filling out here on the right-hand side into intuitive categories. You can see I've built some out already on this one. We can do the same for incomes. And then we have a whole bunch of settings where we can go deep and explore the project as well. So let's have a quick look at our costs here. I've got these different categories that we've broken our site out by. And as I hover over them, it'll explain to me exactly what's calculating there, what's the gross area that it's calculating from, the factor it's timesing by, and the rate per square foot. So I want to do a new expense, and I want it to be based on the usage type, which is the program that's defining the type of building we've drawn here. And I'll do that by saying, okay, I want to add a new usage expense. We're going to focus on residential. You can see I've got all my other metrics here, and now I've got this new area that says financial, and I'm going to hit add expense. Now I'm going to keep this in construction, the construction category, sorry. But we might get a little tighter on the name of the line item. So you can do these calculations at any level of granularity that you want, whether it is a one size fits all level of detail that just gives you a basic construction cost for the usage type, or we can go through and really define multiple line items that all relate to different metrics within the usage. So for this particular example, we might do core and shell, and we're going to base this off of the gross building area. So you can see when I go to define a cost, I have any metric that is in the design or in the project that I can use as the foundation for my calculation. So I'll hit area, and Giraffe says which area. And this is very similar to what you'd be doing in your Excel pro forma. So it's gross building area, and it's 30% of the gross building area, and it's about $300 a square foot. Hit submit, and now I've got a new expense for core and shell. Now I might be able to then go and do the same thing where we say construction, and this time it's the facade cost. And again, I can do grab the facade metric, add a cost per square foot. This is just a couple of examples of how we can get granular on our line items. The beautiful thing is once we've done this one time, we can reuse it on many projects or all across this particular project. So I'll hit save there, and you can see that that's now come through under my construction costs. I've got core and shell and facade. So that's the first concept or first principle behind the financial calculator, is being able to assign costs to a program type that we can then reuse across multiple projects, or anytime when I change this particular program here, you'll see as I adjust the size of the building, the core and shell and the facade cost gets quite big. And also really interestingly, if we start rounding corners, it's going to be changing the price of our facade as well in very interesting ways. So we could start to really get some quite granular problem solving around costs. The other kind of cost that we do, that we've heard a lot of our customers wanting to do, is around the site. So there are lots of different metrics, whether it is grading the site or whether it is calculating the perimeter or doing the fence around the site, that relate to non-building specific metrics. And we want to be able to go into detail to build that out. So one of the use cases is shifting soil. And I can do that by just building a site expense and creating it this way. So I'm just going to do a little calculation here. First of all, it's a total volume that we want to build, and the volume is we're going to do two factors of the volume. We're going to do the building footprint for the foundation, and I'm actually going to change this design to make it a little more intuitive here. How about that? I'll just bring this back here, and I'll delete the car part just to give ourselves some variation. Pop back into site expense, volume, and I'm going to say I want to do first and foremost the building footprint, and I want that to go down 5 feet. And then I want to add another metric here, which is the everything except everything on the site sans the building footprint. And you can see it's highlighting this is the area here, and I only want to bring this down 1 foot. And what this is doing is it's adding these two volumes together to give us a total volume of soil moved in this particular use case. I can then apply a bulking factor, because as we move that soil, it gets bigger. And then we'll call this soil removal. Category is under site costs. Give it a dollar value. Again, we can add a contingency there if we want. But we can keep adding line items, which is what's where this starts to get quite interesting. So if there are different types of soil on our site that we're going to need to factor in, whether it's hazardous waste or asbestos or something like that, we can go through and assign a proportion of that metric with different costs. So we might do hazardous waste. Category goes into site costs. This value of this is a lot higher, $500 a square foot, and it's going to make up about 20% of the costs here. So once I've got that, obviously this is a complex use case, but I wanted to show you the full power of the site expenses here. So I'm going to hit add. Now we'll add it in there. Now we've got our site costs for soil removal and hazardous waste, and it's giving us a nice description of how it's being calculated when we just hover over it.
That's great. James, we have one question, and I think it ties in pretty closely, and it's about usages. So Chris wants to know, where do the costs that fuel the estimates come from?
Where do the costs that fuel the estimates come from? Great question, Chris. That is core to your understanding of Giraffe. So the costs are user input. Everything in Giraffe is user input, but it's typically a one-time input. So when you think about the industry, it would be awesome if we could have an app that gave you, live cost estimates, but every project is different. And so we've created tools that give you the ability to dynamically enter costs on the fly, which you can then repeat and learn as you go. So as you're building out your database of projects, you're actually building out a whole lot of intelligence around your costs and your historicals. Does that answer the question, Maggie, or did I waffle too much then?
No, all good. Would you show him the usages tab just so we can get an idea on what that looks like and how much
yes.
granularity he could get? Yeah.
Yep. So I'll just pop back to that. So where you enter your costs is under the usage type. So a usage is a group of assumptions that define your calculations for that particular building. So we're looking at residential here, but if I go and have a look at one that we haven't defined, commercial, and I'll just get rid of this, I can add those expenses as line items, and I'm determining, based on my logic as a developer or as a government planner, how I want to calculate that particular line item. So if we want to do just a basic construction cost, I can assign it a category, and then we say it's based on the area of the building, gross building, and it's $33 a square foot. And I'm literally just putting that number in on the fly. That would be based on your historicals and your comparables. And then as you're getting quotes back from your GC or from whoever is quoting you on the project, you can update those on the fly, and that will update your model as well.
I just wanted to let you know that we have 10 minutes left to go over the design components if there's no other questions about finance.
Perfect. I might just show one last feature on finance, which is adding a derivative. Once we have our total construction costs or total project costs, I can go down here and add a derivative of expense total, which might be a margin or a contingency of 10%. And I'm just going to go in here and add 10%. And as I do that, it's going to take the total construction price and add 10%. 10% to my price, my build price. So using those three categories, we can do quite a lot. We can build quite a lot of assumptions out very quickly. So where this gets quite powerful, and Chris, to really dive in on what you were asking, if we want to then go and look at a totally different site, but use some of those assumptions or reuse some of those assumptions, we can do so quite quickly using the two other features that we're talking about today. That's Design Library and Design Compare. So let's say we were going to go look at this multifamily site up here. and I'll just start from scratch. First thing I'd need to do is draw my boundary. And I'll hit save. And then I can go and access my design library to pull in those shapes that we built earlier, as well as all the assumptions that we built out in the finance tab. So I'll turn off what's on the side already, and the design library, just hiding down here under import drawing, I can choose any project that I've done before as my basis. So that one was called Austin Project. And there are the shapes that I built along with all the assumptions. So we'll say, in this case, we just want to grab that tower, and that when I select it, it says, do you want to bring in all of the assumptions with this project or with this building? And the answer is yes, I do. And there we go. I just dropped a 10-story residential tower with all of its cost data that we built out on that previous pro forma straight onto my site. And, you know, every site's different. So we might want to do, you know, an L shape here, but the core underlying assumptions are going to be very similar. And as I move the shape, all those costs update on the fly. So that's Design Library 1. And that's a very powerful feature when you start to think about how you can leverage your own work across multiple projects. And it should be mentioned that once you've brought it in, if you edit it here, now it's just in this project. So we understand that every project is different. While you may want to start from the same place, you're probably going to want to end in 2 different places. So as we make changes now, it's not affecting that previous project. Design Compare is a tool that works in tandem with the design library. And that is an add-on that we are selling, and we'll talk about this slightly differently, where you can function as a design brief or a set of KPIs or targets for a client that you need to meet in order for the project to be viable. And it can also function as a kit of parts. So I'll bring up the Design Compare app right here on the right-hand side. And what it needs, it works the same way as the design library, is it needs a source project to be the reference point. So I'll bring up that same Austin project. And what it will do is it'll retrieve the project with all of the areas, all of the number of programs that we had in that project, and use it as a reference point for this new one we're working on. So as I add in the layer that all those that scenario was on, you can see I've got 1 commercial building, 1 retail building, and 1 residential building. And it's suggesting that if I want to meet the brief, I need to add in another count of both of those two usage types. However, it's not always the number of buildings that's significant. Often what a client will need is actually the gross square footages that we're trying to meet on this particular project. So you can see we've got, on that previous project, we had 5,000 square feet of commercial, we had 2,500 square feet of retail, and we had 13,000 square feet of resi. So if I want to then go in and add more square footages, I can either do so by drawing. So if I come down here and I draw a commercial floor plate, it will add in here. I'm actually going to get rid of that. And what I'm going to do is use the exact designs as a kit of parts by just hitting the plus button, grabbing my wrap, dropping it on the site, and there's my wrap from the previous project. Now, we're probably going to rotate it 180 degrees because the orientation is different. And I want to stack it underneath. And there we go. Very quickly, we're able to compare our current design against our brief using those tools, and all of those costs that we brought in from those 2 different usages are still here ready to go. So we've effectively automated our business case for this project. Now, before I go on, Chris or anybody else who had questions, was there anything further that you'd like me to dive into?
No, we have one more question that can wait till the end about our marketplace. So if you want to finish up, that'd be perfect.
Okay, no problem. Well, I was going to, the last cost I wanted to show, or last feature I wanted to show, is importing costs, those site costs at the project level. So those obviously aren't tied to a drawing. If I want to add that same logic that we built out on that site expense from a different project, I can just import that cost here, Poppy and Austin project. And those are the site-wide costs that we built out on that previous project. So I'm going to get rid of all these ones. I'll add in my site costs and I'll add in my contingency, hit import, and now those will be in my project as well. So I might end it there, Maggie, and leave it open, answer that question that we had on the chart.
Perfect. So the question is, I know you have plugins and apps for Giraffe. Is it now part of the Giraffe trial, or is it part of a subscription or a license?
Yeah, good question. So these features are everything except Design Compare is in the app. It's available on your free trial as well as in your paid subscription from the basic price. It's not a paid add-on for finance. It's not a paid add-on for Design Compare, for Design Library. Design Compare, however, is something that we are selling to clients as an additional add-on. So if you're interested in that, I'd be happy to connect with you afterwards.
Yeah, and I think just in general, the marketplace, are they able to utilize the marketplace as a free user, or do they have to have a paid license?
To access the marketplace, you need to have a paid license.
Perfect. And then I have one more follow-up question from Roman. It's, you can draw landscape or roads or paths which crosses the site boundary. In your areas, what part of the road is subtracted from the site area?
Now that's a great question. That's someone who's been paying attention right there. So the road, I'll show you right now. It depends on what kind of calculation that you are talking about. If it's a pure site calculation, if it's a pure usage calculation, then it will add it to the project costs regardless of whether it is inside or outside of the site boundary. So I'll just show you what I mean by that. Road, I just drew a road there that crosses the site boundary. And my road build cost is a lineal cost of $50 a square foot. And I'm calculating using, nearly 50 bucks a foot, nearly 600 feet here. And that will come through as 600 times 50, which is about 3 mil. Where's roads? Up here. But then it's also adding in roads and drainage. There we go. Road build costs, 300. That's about right, isn't it? 600 times 50, 300. Yep, 30,000. There's some quick math on the fly. But then if we're doing a site-based cost, it will only calculate what's inside, Roman, what's inside the boundary. So if we say site and we want to see the total road area, you'll notice that it is, oh no, it does include outside of the deal. There you go. I didn't know that. So it's smarter than I thought it was. Or if you want to see it, the site area without the roads, you can do the inverse, and black is what's left off. So it's very flexible. You can basically capture any metric you want to.
Perfect. We are right at 2:30, so perfect timing.
Great.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Not from my side, but I'd be very happy to take anybody who wants to see it through a demonstration, a personal demonstration. So please jump on the website or shoot us a line, and we're more than happy to show you how any of these features work. And more broadly, outside of these features, if you're interested in transforming your firm digitally for the top of funnel, we'd love to work with you.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for attending our product release update. This will be an ongoing series, so we hope that you'll join us again soon. You can find this recording, past webinars and masterclasses, and upcoming events at giraffe.build, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.